Welcome to this short home learning lesson around stability and balance. What I'm hoping that you'll get from watching this short video and taking your own notes is an understanding of the different factors that affect our stability and balance, and in particular, what does this mean for us in our own gymnastics skill learning. On the next slide, there's a short video that looks at the biomechanics and the physics of gymnastics. You just need to watch the first minute of this video, which is focusing on balance. So first up, the position of the centre of gravity, and we call that the COG, determines the degree of stability. The centre of gravity is that point where all parts of the body are in balance around it, and it's also the point where gravity acts through. So we can see here that the centre of gravity actually occurs within the body, but when we arrange the parts of the body in a different way, the centre of gravity can actually occur outside the body, in this case here, and also in this case here. We'll come back to how altering the centre of gravity can improve stability or balance, but the next thing I'd like to look at is the base of support. So this is the area where the athlete is in contact with the ground. We've got two examples here with tumbling. We've got a girl performing the splits, and that's the base of support for a whole group of three. And in the right hand side here, she's on her back, and this provides a greater surface area touching the ground, so a greater base of support for the same three girls here. So we can already probably see that the second one over here provides a more stable balance because there's a greater base of support than the one that shows just the splits having a smaller surface area of body to ground contact. So let's combine our knowledge of the centre of gravity and our base of support. When we see the centre of gravity, we know that it acts in a downward vertical direction. We can see this from this arrow here with the ice hockey player. If we're looking at our centre of gravity approximately here, acting down through the ground, and probably about there, acting down through the ground, and probably about here, acting down through the ground. What we find is that when that line of gravity falls within the base of support, we have stability or balance. So you can see here the base of support are the two hands and the head. So we've learned about that in the handstand. Here we've got the two hands and the feet. Here we have just one foot. And on this first example, we have a combination of the skates and the stick, all providing a base of support. Now in every case here, we have got the line of gravity acting within that base of support, creating stability or balance in these cases. So when we look at maintaining or increasing stability, we're looking at some of the things we can do, and I'm going to give some examples here of athletes outside of gymnastics. So when we lower our centre of gravity, as it relates to our base of support, we generally become more stable. Okay, and this would happen, for example, if we look at rugby as the sport, you'll see a rugby player, as he crouches down lower, lowering the centre of gravity, he will become more stable, particularly if he's preparing to be tackled. By increasing mass is another way that you can increase stability. Obviously you can't do that at one time, but it's another reason why rugby players, for example, will work on bulking up, because then they are actually a harder mass to move, makes them a little bit more stable. Again, with the analogy of rugby, if you extend your base of support in the direction of an oncoming force, so a rugby player might actually lean in when they're getting tackled or when they're tackling, and what you'll find there is that becomes more stable, less likely to be tipped off balance. And finally, when you move your line of gravity towards the oncoming force. So if you know The rugby player will anticipate that there's someone coming in to tackle them, and they will actually lean forward, often moving their line of gravity outside the base of support in order to anticipate that oncoming collision. So these are just some different ways that we can do it. If we have a little look at the picture here of the gymnast, she's got quite a wide base of support for the beam. She's got her hands and her bottom all the way around, and if we look at her centre of gravity being approximately here, then it's acting downwards through the base of support. And this is a much greater base of support than if she was just on one foot or on her hands, for example. So how do we apply this to gymnastics? Let's have a little look. We've got our base of support here around the hands. Our centre of gravity is approximately here, okay, and we see our line of gravity coming straight down through the base of support. So at the moment she's in a stable or balanced position, and ideally should be holding that position over a period of time. This one here, we have a smaller base of support. It's actually unclear whether her foot is resting against the wall or not, but at the moment we'll say that it's not. So you could actually stand up and practice this now, just on one foot, raising your leg upwards and seeing what happens. Okay, what you'll probably find as you raise your foot upwards is your centre of gravity is actually moved over beyond this foot. So it actually falls outside of your base of support, and you'll feel a tilting or a rotation around the foot towards the side where your leg is lifted. If you lift your arms up as well, you actually raise your centre of gravity. So if it originally was down here with your arms down, when you raise your arms, because you're redistributing the mass, your centre of gravity actually comes a little bit higher, and what that means is you're even less stable and you start to rotate around this foot. Just have a go with it now and see how it works. Hopefully you've tried that little drill now. So what we find is that the centre of gravity of the gymnast has moved outside of a base of support. This creates a small torque, which is a small turning force, and that's in the direction of the raised leg. You'll start to become more unstable, and you should feel this more as you raise your arms above your head, because the centre of gravity is higher, and we already know that lowering the centre of gravity can increase stability and balance. So if you want to learn how to hold a handstand as a balance, so sort of 5 seconds in the same position, have a think about this. Balance is maintained by small eccentric forces acting about the wrist. So this is kind of almost like your axis of rotation, and we know that we swing up already to get in. Sorry, that's meant to be a, let's try it like that, to get into your handstand position. So the axis of rotation is actually happening here, but then you want to stop that rotation so that the centre of gravity and the line of gravity is acting directly through the base of support. So these little eccentric forces here back and forward, actually you should actively feel these, and you're keeping yourself in a balanced position here. If you widen your fingers to have space in between your fingers when you're on the floor, that's actually going to slightly increase the base of support and might make you a little bit more stable. So there's some specific things to try. Okay, one of the skills that you'll be working towards is a handstand to forward roll with control. So we've got a really small base of support to start with, okay, as we come up into the handstand, just around the hands only. The centre of gravity is high, so stability is quite low. And in this position here, we can see the line of gravity acting straight through the base of support. However, we then move our feet forward, which takes our line of gravity outside of the base of support. Okay, and we're going to obviously then generate a torque, a small turning force, which will initiate our rotation. There's no resistance to the torque. We don't have a wall against our feet or anything like that. So what we need to do is make sure that that initial torque, the feet moving in a controlled way past the centre of gravity, that it happens in a controlled way and it's not too great, so that we can actually control the rotation and finish again in this balanced position with our centre of gravity over our base of support. So finally, what does this mean for you in your practice? How can you ensure greater stability and greater balance? Knowing these biomechanical principles, you need to use body tension. Okay, you need to make sure your muscles are working to hold yourself in position, so that your center of gravity, for example, can be, or your line of gravity can be held in a position over the base of support to maintain that balance. You can focus your eyes on one position to help you maintain balance. Look at ways of widening your base of support to make your balance more stable and easier to hold. Look at where your center of gravity is, and look at if you're in a position to be able to lower that to make it more stable. You should be working to hold your balance position for at least 5 seconds without any movement. Okay, so that's what you're aiming for. So girls, I hope you've got an idea of the factors that affect stability and balance, and how you can use this knowledge to improve your gymnastic skills. Thanks very much.